There was a time when the world called him a genius, a visionary, a revolutionary, the man who changed music, fashion, and culture. But today, at 48 years old, the name Kanye West no longer means the same. It's no longer synonymous with innovation. It's synonymous with tragedy. Kanye's story is not just that of a successful rapper. It's that of a man who had it all: talent, money, influence, who rose so high he believed nothing could touch him. But the higher he climbed, the further he drifted from reality, until his own weight dragged him into the void. It all began in Chicago. A young producer with no criminal record, no tattoos, no gun in his waistband. Kanye West was everything rap didn't want to be in the 90s. And yet, he changed the rules. When he produced Izzo, H-O-V-A, for Jay-Z, the doors opened. But he didn't just want to be the guy behind the beat. He wanted to be in front of the mic. And when he made it, the world didn't know how to react. The College Dropout was an earthquake, an album that spoke of insecurities, family, and faith. It didn't come with violence or drugs or hate. It was vulnerable, honest, different, and it worked. The awards came. So did the sales. But most importantly, Kanye became the voice of a generation. Not just because he rhymed well, but because he said what many felt, but no one dared to sing. Late registration and graduation only reinforced his dominance. His ability to mix the classical with the modern was unmatched, and his ego, already growing, found a reason to explode. Kanye wasn't just big, he felt unstoppable. A visionary misunderstood by the industry, but adored by the public. Then came tragedy. In 2007, his mother, Donda West, died after cosmetic surgery. It was his greatest loss. The woman who raised him, educated him, accompanied him everywhere, vanished from his life in an instant. Kanye broke inside, but the world didn't know right away, because he kept going. That pain lingered in the air, unspoken, and it eventually became music. 80s and Heartbreak was the result. A cold, melancholic album full of auto-tune and emptiness. Rap had been left behind. Now Kanye just wanted to speak with his soul. Critics were divided. Fans had doubts. But once again, everyone copied him. Drake, The Weeknd, Travis Scott. They were all born from the sound Kanye created in that album. Then, in 2010, he released The Unthinkable, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Recorded in seclusion, isolated from the noise, it was his artistic redemption. Critics called it the perfect album, an act of redemption and arrogance at the same time. It was baroque, majestic, a desperate cry from someone who knew he was losing control, but still had the talent to disguise it as art. At that moment, Kanye wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural phenomenon. His impact extended to fashion, design, marketing, spectacle. He graced the cover of Time, starred in Vogue editorials. His relationship with Kim Kardashian placed him at the center of everything. And the whole world didn't just follow him, it consumed him. But the higher he climbed, the more isolated he became. Kanye never hid his ego. He compared himself to Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Shakespeare, even Jesus Christ. And to many, he meant it. He created Yeezy, his own clothing brand. First with Nike, then with Adidas. Sneakers that looked like they came from the future and sold out in minutes. Fashion rejected him, at first, but they couldn't ignore him. The numbers were too big, the hype too high, and Kanye too influential. By 2015, he was one of the most powerful figures on the planet. Millionaire, artist, entrepreneur, father, icon, but also a volcano ready to erupt. At his concerts, speeches started appearing in the middle of songs. He interrupted, screamed, accused. Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Obama, the industry. No one was safe. In November 2016, after a series of erratic episodes, Kanye was hospitalized for mental exhaustion. He was sedated, detained, silenced. That's when the world found out what he had been carrying for years: bipolar disorder. And still, he came back. In 2018, with Ye, a short, raw album that spoke of suicide, anxiety, and fear. Kanye recorded it in Wyoming, far from everything, locked in with his demons. Then came Jesus is King, a gospel album. No profanity, no rage, only God. He said he had been saved, that he had seen the light, that his ego had died. But it wasn't true. In 2020, he announced his candidacy for President of the United States. No party, no structure, just him, his name, and his faith. At his first rally, he cried in front of a crowd. He confessed he had wanted to abort his first daughter. He screamed, laughed, cried, all in 30 minutes. And the world watched, perplexed, in disbelief, uncomfortable. The consequences were devastating. Kim Kardashian filed for divorce. Brands began to distance themselves. The media no longer covered him as a genius, but as a threat. But Kanye didn't stop. He began attacking everyone on social media: artists, politicians, journalists, former partners. Each day, a new enemy. Each tweet, a new scandal. In 2021, he released Donda, the album honoring his mother, a massive, chaotic project full of collaborations. He presented it in stadiums, turned it into a spectacle. And although it sold, it wasn't the same. The music was still there, but the audience wasn't. Kanye had become an unpredictable figure, and then unacceptable. In 2022, Kanye West crossed a line he could no longer return from. For years, he had flirted with controversy, but this time was different. In interviews, on podcasts, on his social media, Kanye began making openly anti-Semitic statements. He denied the Holocaust, praised Hitler, spoke of Jewish control over the media. They weren't just throwaway lines, they were full ideas, defended, repeated. The world didn't take long to respond. Adidas, his most powerful partner, dropped him. Balenciaga cut ties. Gap erased him from all their stores. His talent agency dropped him. His access to social media was restricted. And just like that, in a matter of days, Kanye West lost nearly $2 billion. His fortune, which had made him one of the richest artists in history, vanished. Forbes erased him from its list. Brands erased him from their catalogs. Media erased him from their pages. And most painfully, the public erased him from memory. He was no longer a provocative figure. He was a pariah. The fall wasn't symbolic. It was economic, cultural, and spiritual. His most loyal fans, those who had defended him for years, fell silent. Others called him sick. Few supported him openly. And those who did it with fear. But Kanye didn't stop. He kept speaking, kept posting, kept digging his own public grave. He appeared hooded, wearing masks, wearing clothes that hid his face, his body, his identity, as if he no longer wanted to be seen, as if he no longer wanted to be himself. The man who once shouted that God had given him the vision now seemed to have gone blind. He stepped away from music, released no albums, didn't appear at festivals, wasn't nominated for awards, wasn't invited to galas. His presence, once dominating every space, became faint, blurred, unstable. Paparazzi found him walking alone through Los Angeles, wearing dirty clothes, face covered, holding hands with women no one recognized. No security, no assistance, no direction. The silence became deafening. Kanye, who once graced covers for his talent, was now only featured for his scandals. And when there were no scandals, no one asked about him. He tried to speak again of faith, of God, of redemption, but no one wanted to listen. To the public, he was no longer an artist. He was a warning, the story of a genius who had it all, and lost it for not knowing when to stay silent. Documentaries no longer honored him. Festivals no longer sought him. Young artists no longer cited him as an influence, and his peers ignored him completely. The closest thing to a comeback happened in small interviews, on minor channels, where he talked about conspiracies, secrets, darkness. His gaze wasn't the same anymore. Neither was his voice. He seemed tired, lost, and empty. In one of those interviews, he confessed that he had been an addict. Not to drugs, not to alcohol, but to power. "I was obsessed with winning," he said, "with dominating, with controlling. But none of it gave me peace." It was a Kanye few recognized. No shouting, no viral quotes, no arrogance, just a man trying to understand when exactly he lost everything. Music, his greatest weapon, no longer accompanied him. Fans, his greatest shield, no longer defended him. And the industry, his greatest platform, no longer wanted him close. He tried to release an independent album, Donda 2nd, but it never reached the platforms. It was distributed through a device called the stem player. It was a commercial failure and a desperate cry to regain control. But it was already too late. Kanye West no longer set trends, no longer led the conversation. He was no longer needed. The most tragic thing wasn't his fall. It was his disappearance. Because there was no tribute, no farewell, no send-off. He simply stopped being. In 2023, his public presence dropped to a minimum. He was occasionally seen on the streets of Europe, far from the United States, far from everything. Some reports spoke of financial problems, of property sales, of lack of liquidity, of debts. Others said he lived like a hermit, that he only spoke with his inner circle, that he spent hours locked away without saying a word. And even though his name still draws attention, it no longer commands respect. Pop culture left him behind. New artists don't cite him. Awards don't mention him. Fashion doesn't invite him. And music doesn't need him. For someone like Kanye, that's worse than death. Because he lived off impact, off the echo, off the reaction. And now, there's only silence. A silence heavier than any scandal, heavier than any tweet, heavier than any statement. Because in that silence lies the confirmation of his end. He didn't win the Grammy for Album of the Year. He didn't enter the Hall of Fame. He didn't receive a lifetime tribute. He didn't have his last big concert. He simply disappeared. Kanye West was many things: genius, provocateur, idol, pioneer, tyrant, victim, executioner. But today, he's just an uncomfortable memory, a name many prefer to avoid, a story no one knows how to end. Because there's no redemption, no closure, no comeback, just a 48-year-old man who conquered the world and then lost it, not for lack of talent, but from an excess of himself. And maybe that's the most painful part. He wasn't destroyed by the industry, nor by his enemies, nor by the system. It was him, his ambition, his ego, his need to be larger than life, larger than God, larger than Kanye himself. Today he lives away from the spotlight, in some discreet house. No cameras, no interviews, no new albums, no applause. And the world, the one he helped build, moves on without him. Maybe one day his full story will be told. Maybe someone will have the courage to tell it without filters. But for now, this is all that remains. A genius without a crown. A god without a temple. An idol who broke before our very eyes. And that silence is louder than any platinum record. More cruel than any critique. More real than any award. That silence is the true end of Kanye West.